Welcome to the Chemistry, Biology and Math Revision Hub. Today we are doing the Pearson Edexcel International GCSE Biology Paper 1B for November 2024. Let's begin with the first question. In question 1, the diagram shows an insect-pollinated flower with some structures labeled. So here they say which structures are the male parts of the flower. The male parts of the flower are this part here, so T and U are part of the male part, which is D, so that's the answer. And then they say on which structure does the pollen grains germinate. They germinate on the stigma, which is structure P, so A is the answer. And next they ask which structure becomes the seed after fertilization. This is going to be the structure here inside the ovary. That is what is going to be fertilized and becomes the seed, and the ovary casing becomes the fruit, or the ovary becomes the fruit. In B, they say the structure shows a strawberry plant. This plant can reproduce sexually using its flowers or asexually. We can see the flowers here, and then the runners. They say describe how a strawberry plant reproduces asexually. Asexually meaning the runners are going to form from the parent plant, and of course they grow into a shoot. A shoot is going to have roots, and after some time, this is going to grow into a new plant that breaks away from the parent plant. So I say they use runners, shoots grow from the runners, and the shoots grow into new plants that form roots and break off to become independent. Next, they say a farmer wants to produce a plant that has strawberries with a different flavor, meaning different from the flavor they already have. He then wants to produce large numbers of these plants. It could be through micropropagation, or it could be through any other method using cuttings and so on. So they say discuss how he can use sexual and asexual reproduction to achieve this. At first, they're going to use sexual reproduction in order to basically get the different flavor they're looking for. They have to combine different alleles or breed different plants in order to create the flavor they're looking for. Once that flavor is attained, then they can generate through asexual reproduction. So I say the farmer should use sexual reproduction, cross-pollinate different plant breeds to produce the desired flavor, then use asexual reproduction with cuttings or runners or micropropagation to produce large numbers of genetically identical plants. Next, they say complete the passage about the lungs by writing a suitable word in each blank space. They begin by saying the organs of gas exchange in humans are the lungs, a single tube cord. There should be a trachea which allows air to move towards the lungs. This tube splits into two tubes called the bronchi. Each is a bronchus, which then divides into many narrow tubes called the bronchioles. At the end of these narrow tubes are air sacs called alveoli, and these are where gas exchange takes place. The lungs are inflated by the contraction of a muscle or a muscular sheet called, that is the diaphragm, and the intercostal muscles also contract to move the ribs to expand the chest cavity. In question 3, the diagram shows the digestive system of a dog with some structures labeled. The digestive system of the dog is similar to that of a human. So they say which structure is the esophagus. This is going to be structure P here. So the answer is A. And then which structure is the large intestine? They should be the structure which is connected towards the rectum. So we can say structure T. And then next they say which structure contains the villi. The villi are contained in the small intestine, which is going to be the structure here. So we can say it's structure S. So the answer is C. And next they say which structure is the stomach. The stomach should be this one here, connected to the esophagus. So it should be Q, and therefore A is the answer. Then they say describe how food is moved along the gut of the dog. Now still it's going to be by peristalsis. The sacral muscles are going to contract in order to push as the radial muscles relax. So the contraction and the relaxation of these two muscles allow the food to be pushed from one section of the gut to the next. In part C, the table lists some ingredients in food given to young dogs and in food given to adult dogs. So from the table, we see proteins, fat, calcium, and phosphate. Proteins, we compare, there is higher here in comparison to that. Fat higher here than that, higher here than that, and higher here than that. Overall, there is greater for the young dogs in comparison to the adult dogs. And there is a reason as to why they're getting each in high amounts, like proteins. Of course, they need to provide the amino acids that can be used to make the dog protein, meaning in their body, in order to grow and repair. The fat, this is extra source of energy. They can be respired. Calcium, of course, for bone and teeth growth. And then the phosphate for making DNA, RNA, and so on. So they say discuss the differences between the composition of the two foods. I said based on the table, food given to young dogs contains a higher percentage by mass of all ingredients. They are given more proteins to provide more amino acids for protein synthesis, and this helps in growth and repair. They are given more fat to provide food source or more food source for respiration, and they're given more calcium for growth of bones and teeth. They're given more phosphate to form more DNA, RNA, ATP, and so on. Next, they say the diet of wild dogs consists of prey animals and a small amount of plant material contained in the gut of their prey. Domesticated dogs are often given a diet that contains large amounts of carbohydrates such as starch. Explain the possible effects of feeding domestic dogs large quantities of carbohydrates such as starch. If they feed on large amounts of starch, the excess is going to be converted into glycogen, and then if it's too much, into fat, and the fat is going to be stored. This could lead to obesity. So I say large amounts of carbohydrate will provide more glucose than the body can use. They're given excess, so that is going to be stored into glycogen and then into fat. The fat storage will lead to obesity, while excess glucose leads to diabetes. The dogs will lack other nutrients like proteins if they are given more carbohydrates, and this will lead to poor growth. In question 4, they say the diagram shows a section through the human eye with some structures labeled. So they say which structure refracts the light onto the retina. They should be the lens as well as the cornea. So I wrote F and H. And next they say which structure controls the amount of light reaching the retina. That should be the iris structure G. So that should be the answer. In which structure contains light sensitive cells? That is going to be the retina, which is the structure K. So the answer is D. Next, they say the eye can focus on near objects and distant objects. Describe the changes that take place in the eye when it focuses on near objects. Remember, when it's focusing on near objects, the light is leaving the near objects in a diverging manner. So the lens has to adjust itself in order to bend the light as much as possible in order to focus that onto the retina. So I said accommodation takes place, adjusting the lens to refract the light and focus the image appropriately to the retina. So the ciliary muscles contract, the suspensory ligaments are going to slack, and the lens is going to become fat, or you could say more convex. In part C, they say some people develop cataracts in their lenses as they get older. The diagram shows how a cataract changes the appearance of a person's eye. We can see this is normal, and this is with a cataract. We can see it's cloudy. This explains how cataracts affect a person's vision. Because of the cloudiness, the vision is going to be blurry, and so less light is going to enter the eye, so vision is going to be blurred. Then they say the treatment of a person with cataracts is to remove the affected lenses, suggest what treatment is needed for the person. They could wear glasses or use contact lenses. In question 5, scientists can investigate the effect of exercise on breathing rate. An athlete wears a face mask and covers their nose and mouth. The mask contains electronic sensors that measure and record the athlete's breathing rate as they exercise. An investigation using this mask produces these results. So this is a face mask, and I'm thinking it could interfere with the way they're breathing in and out. So we have the results, time since start of the exercise, and then the breathing rate. Then they say calculate the percentage change in breathing rate from the start of exercise to the breathing rate at 10 minutes. At 10 minutes, we have 50, and at the start, we have 20. So the difference is going to be 50 minus 20, which is 30. And so the percentage change is going to be 30 divided by 20, which was the original times 100, giving us 150%. Next, they say plot a line graph to show how breathing rate changes during exercise. They want to join your points using straight lines. they said lines, plural, so we connect any points that create straight lines. On the vertical axis, I put breathing rate, and the horizontal axis is time since the start of exercise. This is per minute, and this is in minutes. So the points were plotted like that, and I connected with straight lines. If you do choose an appropriate scale and position the independent variable on the x-axis, the dependent variable on the y-axis, all the points plotted appropriately, labels and units and so on, then you get 4 marks. The next I say explain the change in breathing rate during the 12 minutes of exercise. So here we can see the breathing rate increases with exercise until it flattens. The reason for this is as they begin to exercise, of course, more oxygen is needed for aerobic respiration, so they get to breathe in deeper. So I say during exercise, the breathing rate increases from the start and reaches a maximum at 50 breaths per minute. This is to deliver more oxygen for aerobic respiration to enable muscle contraction. Also, carbon dioxide has to be removed. After the maximum, the lungs can't fill quicker enough to allow for more breaths per minute. Next, I say explain why the breathing rate would remain high for a few minutes after the exercise has finished. This is to overcome the oxygen debt because lactate is produced during exercise. So I say it because lactate builds up due to anaerobic respiration during exercise. So breathing continues after exercise to overcome this oxygen debt. And next, the difficulty with measuring breathing rates during exercise is that wearing a mask may affect breathing rate and performance. A different method of recording breathing rate is to wear a shirt that contains sensors that record chest movements. So just one advantage and one disadvantage of using the shirt that measures breathing rate by recording chest movements. The advantage is it's not going to cover the mouth, so it's not going to affect the way the person is breathing in and out. The disadvantage is it's measuring using chest movements, and the person is running or exercising, the muscles are also going to be active, so it could record results that are not due to breathing but just muscle movements due to the exercise. So I say the shirt could be heavy, or it may measure muscle movement as breathing rate, and if the person sweats, sweat may interfere with the results because these are sensors, so the sweat may interfere with the way the sensors attach onto the body. In question 6, this insect is the fruit fly Drosophila melanogaster. These flies are the most commonly used organisms for genetic research. They have a life cycle of around 10 days, and each female can produce hundreds of offsprings. We can see that here. They say, explain one reason why Drosophila are a popular choice for scientists to use in genetic studies. We know they have shorter life cycles, so we can study the results from genetic experiments for many generations within a shorter period of time. And also they have multiple characteristics that can be studied. Next, they say flies normally have long wings, but some flies have been found to have short wings. In a first cross, a scientist mates 10 male flies with long wings and 10 female flies with short wings. They have 2,810 offsprings, and all of them have long wings, meaning they're all heterozygous. So they said the scientists then set up a second cross. They made a male offspring from the first cross and a female offspring from the first cross, meaning they're mating 2 heterozygotes. The second cross produces 241 offsprings with long wings and 79 offsprings with short wings. So they said draw a genetic diagram to show the genotypes and phenotypes of the parent in the second cross and the ratio of the phenotypes and genotypes of their offsprings. So taking the genotype to be L for long wings, and so the other is going to be for short. So both of the parents are going to be heterozygotes. This is for the second cross. And so the possible genotypes of the offsprings are going to be that, and that, the ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. And the phenotype is going to be those with long wings are going to be 3. We can see those here, 1, 2, 3. And this is going to have short wings, so the ratio is 3 to 1. The next they say calculate the expected probability of a fly being male and having long wings. To be male, the probability is 1/2, and to have long wings like we've seen here is 3 out of 4. So we multiply that and get 3/8. Next, they say the scientists counted the number of male and female offsprings with long wings or with short wings from the second course. The table shows the results. So we have the number of flies for males with long wings, short wings, females with long and short. Remember from our results from the genetic diagram, we saw the ratio of long wings to short wings should be 3:1, meaning that plus that is going to be 3 times the sum of that and that. So anyway, they say comment on these results compared with the expected results. In your answer, refer to the number of male and number of females, the number of flies with long wings, and the number of flies with short wings. So we know from a genetic study, the ratio of male to female should be 50-50. So we expect when we sum up that, and that should be 50-50. Also, those with long wings, we saw from, and again, I'm looking at the expected results, the sum of that and that should be the ratio 3:1, because we saw phenotypically the ratio of long wings to short wings should be 3:1. That is the expected. For male with long wings, it should be 1/2 times 3/4 times the total, which is 320, giving us 120, and we see 118 is closer to 120. Like I said, for males, it should be that plus that divided by 320. We see the percentage, of course, times 100. The percentage is 48.4%, which is closer to 50%. The females, I added that plus that divided by the total times 100 gives us 51.6. And again, this is closer to the 50 because I said 50-50 for the ratio between the two. Then for short wings, probability 1/2 because male, and then ratio of short wings 1/4, giving us 1/8. If I say 1/8 times 320, which was the total, it gives me 40, and this value is closer to 40. Then long wings that are female, for female 1/2, for long wings 3/4, giving me 3/8. 3/8 times 320 gives me 120, which is closer to that. And then lastly, short wings female, it's going to be same 1/8 times 320, giving me 40. So this is also closer to that. Anyway, now I can go through the results. I say the expected results was 50% female, 50% male. However, the observed is about 52 female and 48 male. This is closer. The expected number with long wings is 75%, while with short wings is 25%. This is the ratio of 3:1. This is almost the same as we can see there. The percentage of flies with long wings is approximately 75%, and those with short wings is approximately 25%. Also, the expected number of males with long wings, males with short wings, females with long wings, and females with short wings is, I calculated here, we have 120, then we have 40, 120, and 40, respectively. The observed numbers are closer to the expected numbers. The next is the flies with short wings are not found in wild populations of Drosophila. Explain this observation. If they're not found in wild populations, then it means having short wings is disadvantageous, and so it's going to be selected against. So I say the short-winged Drosophila can't fly well. As a result of natural selection, fewer survive the selection pressure to reproduce and pass on their alleles to their offsprings. In question 7, they say this food chain comes from the Swedish lake. We have algae, crustacea, perch, pike, and osprey. They say name the trophic level of the algae in the food chain. The algae is the producer. And then name the trophic level of the pike. This is our tertiary consumer. We see primary, secondary, tertiary. And next they say some algae are single-celled such as chlorella, while others are multicellular such as seaweed. The diagram shows a species of chlorella. So this is the structure. They say the diameter of the chlorella is 10 micrometer. Calculate the magnification. So the magnification, it means we have to get the diameter of that, and it was about 75 millimeters. This is the same as 75,000 micrometer. Magnification, which is image divided by actual, I got 7,500 as my answer. Next, they say calculate the volume of the chlorella. Assume chlorella is a sphere with radius r, so which is 5 micrometer. They've given us this formula. So volume should be 4/3 times this pi times 5 power 3, and I got 5 to 3. Since its volume, it should be micrometer cubed. Then they say the cytoplasm contains a very large chloroplast. Describe the function of the chloroplast. The chloroplast participates in absorption of sunlight so that photosynthesis can take place in order to make glucose. And then they say chlorella contains many starch granules. Describe the function of starch granules in this organism. The starch granules are going to be used to store carbohydrates. That could be used in cellular respiration to release ATP. Then in part C, a student wants to compare the number of individuals in seaweed populations on 2 different beaches. Describe how the student could carry out this investigation. So here we can randomly throw quadrats, and then you count the number of organisms per quadrat. If you want, you can use a random number generator in order to ensure that you have randomized the whole process. So then you repeat several times and calculate the mean number. Then you multiply by the area to find the total number. Then question 8, the body has a hormonal control system that coordinates some of the body's responses. The table shows the effects of some of the hormones and the glands that produce each hormone. They want you to complete the table by giving the missing information. The first effect converts blood glucose into glycogen. The hormone is insulin and is produced in the pancreas. Then stimulates the development of male sexual characteristics, that is testosterone, which is produced in the testes. Increases heart rate, adrenaline from the adrenal glands, and maintains the uterine lining. This is progesterone from the ovary. Then next they say plants also respond to changes in the environment. Explain how plants benefit from the responses of their roots and stems to the direction of light they receive. So we know stems grow towards light while roots grow away from the light. So the stems are growing towards light to enable the leaves to absorb more sunlight for photosynthesis to occur. And the roots grow away from light. You could say this is negative phototropism, into the soil to take up more water and mineral ions. The mineral ions, like nitrates, are used for making proteins, magnesium for making chlorophyll, phosphates for making DNA, and the water is necessary for turgidity in cells to give support to the plant and for photosynthesis. In many plants, flowering is stimulated by the number of hours of daylight. Suggests why flowering in many plants is stimulated by the number of hours of daylight rather than by temperature. So temperature can vary greatly within a single day, but the daylight does not suddenly change, usually kind of similar in each season. So I say daylight is a good indicator of the time of year or season. Since temperature can dynamically, or you could say dramatically, vary in one day, while day length is somewhat consistent within a season. This allows pollinators like insects to be present when flowering takes place. In question 9, many insect species damage crop plants. One such pest is the larvae of the fall armyworm moth. The photograph shows a larva of this moth feeding on the leaf of a maize plant. We can see the leaves are damaged. This explains how the larvae of the moth cause a reduction in the yield of the maize. If they feed on the leaf, they decrease the surface area for photosynthesis, and therefore less glucose will be made, and so less biomass is going to be stored down. So I said larvae eat leaves. If they are present, many leaves are eaten and the chlorophyll decreases. This leads to less sunlight absorption, less photosynthesis, less glucose is made, and less starch is stored. Hence the yield is going to decrease. Then in B, they say biological control involves using a predator species to control the number of a pest species. Explain the advantage of using biological control rather than chemical pesticides to control a pest species. Using biological control overcomes some side effects from using chemicals like bioaccumulation and magnification. So I said it only targets a specific organism. This does not negatively impact the food chain. It does not lead to genetic resistance. We have seen when they use pesticides, some of them do cause genetic resistance, and the organisms become resistant to the chemical being used, or become bioaccumulated or biomagnified in ecosystems, and it does not need to be reapplied. A parasitic wasp is used as a biological control of the larvae of the fall armyworm moth. The wasp feeds off the moth larvae. The graph shows the change in the numbers of larvae of this worm moth. It also shows the change in the numbers of the parasitic wasp. We can see initially these increase, but as they begin to increase, also the wasps increase. And then they reach a time where these begin to decrease as these are increasing more. The increase in this is because they are having enough food because they feed on the moth. So they feed on them, and as they reach a maximum, these are decreasing because they are overly consumed. And then we see these now lack food, so they begin to decrease because the food has gone down. And then as they go down, meaning they're decreasing, these begin to increase because there are fewer predators. And again, there is more food, then the predators begin to increase because there is more prey. So it's kind of like a cyclic graph, typical of predator-prey relationships. So they say explain the relationship between the number of moths and the number of wasps during the 24-month period. Here I say the number of wasps increases shortly after the number of moths increases. For example, at 6 months, the number of moths peaks at 250. This is approximately 250 at about 6 months. And the number of wasps peaks shortly after at around 7 months. We can see that, reaching 2400. This same lag shows that as the moth larvae increase, more food becomes available for the parasitic wasps, so their population also rises. Then as the wasp numbers increase, they reduce the moth population, seen by the drop in the moth numbers around 8 to 9 months, while wasps remain high. This cyclical pattern repeats every few months, showing a predator-prey relationship. Next, they say the range in moth numbers is the difference between the highest number of the moth and the lowest number of moths. Use the graph to determine the maximum range of the number of moths in the period from 6 months to 24 months. So here we saw a maximum of 250 and the minimum was 850. This was the lowest and this was the highest. So 250 minus 850 gave 1300, and that's the answer. Then they say suggest why some maize farmers choose not to use biological control to control the moths. Biological control is not completely gonna eliminate the pests, and it could take longer for the pests to begin to decrease. So I said biological control can take time to reduce pest numbers, which might allow crop damage to occur before the population drops. Also, the wasps may not completely eliminate the moths and may be less predictable than chemical pesticides. Next, they say some scientists believe that increasing the temperature by 3 degrees Celsius in a glass house will significantly increase crop yield. Design an investigation to determine whether a small change in temperature in a glass house will produce a significant increase in crop yield. Include experimental details in your answer and write in full sentences. So I said set up 2 identical glass houses at different temperatures. Remember, they say 3 degree difference, so one should be 3 degrees higher than the other. The crop used should be the same species as well as age. Then we can repeat the experiment at each temperature value and calculate the mean. Then grow the crops for the same time period. This could be like a month. Measure the crop yield at the end of the growing period. In this case, you could do that by measuring total mass of the crops harvested, or it could be the number of leaves, or it could be the weight of the fruit, or it could even be the length of the stem, whichever you choose. In doing this experiment, we have to control all variables like carbon dioxide concentration, water, soil type, mineral ions, light intensity, and also ensure that temperature is the only variable that is changing. So this brings us to the end of this paper. Thank you for being with us. Do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.